Hey guys, it's Sean O'Connell, the managing editor here at CinemaBlend, back with another recap of episode 2 of season 1 of WandaVision. We are running our way through the entire season of the Disney Plus show from Marvel Studios. We're going to be doing analysis, not quite reaction, but just breaking down all the things that we learned through the series. So if you missed our reaction to the debut of the series, make sure you go back and find it here on the channel. It breaks down a lot of things that I thought about, things that happened in there, and how they continue over into this one. This is where you want to be for all things WandaVision, so make sure that you keep it locked here. In order to guarantee that you do that, hit subscribe and turn on your notifications, because I'm going to do an analysis video like this after every episode, and I want to make sure that you guys get to see every single one of them. So I want to start with the last line of episode 2 of the first season, which is,
"Who's doing this to you, Wanda?"
So far, it's the big question. Like, who is doing this to Wanda? We get a lot more confirmation in this second episode that Wanda is in control of the sitcom that is playing out. And I love that in the second episode, they still adhere to the blueprint of a traditional decade sitcom, but even this one, which is now a 60s direct Bewitched rip, is so different in tone and pace and the way that the humor moves from what we saw in the 1950s Dick Van Dyke episode, where the jokes from that one played exactly how they would in a 1950s episode, and the pacing of this one was faster. The humor was a little bit more sophisticated. It rolled off of the fear of that Wanda doesn't fit in with the suburban wives, that they have to meet a certain expectations of the neighborhood, themes that were really prevalent to audiences watching sitcoms in the 1960s, and they just find a way to apply it to the situation going through with Wanda and Vision. But we hear very specifically through the radio, and then of course the beekeeper who comes out of the street, who also had a sword logo on. Remember, we talked about sword at length after the first episode, that someone is trying to contact Wanda from the outside in. So it brings up a number of questions if we think about it from a big picture scenario. Wanda is clearly somewhere, and she is conjuring this existence for her and Vision to live in. She actually says at one point to him,
"This is our home now."
She's talking about, in the context of the show, their house in the neighborhood where they're living, but she's also talking to Vision, I believe, without this being confirmed yet by the actions of the show. This is our home now. Like, this is where she's set up an alternate reality for her and Vision to exist in, because he has passed away. Died in Infinity War, has not come back, and so she's created an existence where the two of them can live together and sort of play out the life that they might have envisioned for themselves if the two of them were not Avengers. A child. Throughout the course of this episode, we hear the logo for the children, and by the end of the episode, Wanda's pregnant. So they're getting to a point where they're going to be able to raise a family in this pseudo-artificial environment that Wanda has created for her and Vision. We start to see a couple of the things bleed through in terms of sword things breaking through the artifice of Wanda's creation, the helicopter and the splash of color that comes with that, how that calls to mind a little bit of that brilliant film Pleasantville, and how there was an artificial reality set up by these kids who got sucked into a TV show. But slowly, as people started to awaken to some knowledge, things would gain color, and people who were in the show started to realize that something else was going on. And Wanda is starting to realize that something else is going on. She hears the voice coming across the radio. Very funny that they use "Help Me Rhonda," which of course you could very easily shoehorn in "Help Me Wanda" there as well too. And they use that to piggyback off of someone asking Wanda, like, who is doing this to you? That also implies, so not only does it imply that Wanda is somewhere and manifesting this new environment for her and Vision to be in, but it implies that somebody is also trying to get to Wanda and help her, almost help. I assume help, because they want to know who's doing this to her. So and then it also implies there's a third party who is doing something to Wanda to trigger this environment. We might have gotten the hint of who it could be in the second use of a commercial that's in the middle of the episode break, and this one was for Strucker watches. Now, that takes us back to Age of Ultron and the fact that the twins, Wanda and her brother Pietro, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, obviously Quicksilver, were experiments by Baron von Strucker. And we only got Strucker very briefly, and he's a significant character in the Marvel Comics, and of course a member of Hydra. And the watch did have a Hydra logo on it, and this could be, I sort of translated this a couple different ways. If Wanda is someplace and she's lost in her thought process and she's lost in her imagination, she could very easily be pulling reference points and memories and putting together a fake episode from a sitcom of the period that she's lost in. And so she would remember the fact that she had been tinkered with by Baron von Strucker, and she could create a Strucker watch with Hydra. And it was the watch was set to 242. I did a really quick search to see if there was like an Avengers 242 or a comic book issue that has something to do with Strucker. I'll do some more research to see if Strucker shows up in something, if the 242 is significant of something, but it didn't ring a bell right off the bat. And she could just be pulling that from an old memory and putting it in as the commercial, or it could mean that it's actually Hydra or remnants of Hydra who are doing something to Wanda at this point now. And the reason why we were able to see that Wanda has really strong control over the events that take place inside the simulation of the sitcom is that when she sees the beekeeper emerge out of the manhole cover and come into the street, she breaks the illusion, and she essentially says, like, no, you're not going to come here now. This isn't going to happen. I'm not letting you in, almost. And she rewinds everything that we've seen up to that point and then plays out a different ending. So she has a lot more control over what is happening in the sitcom than we were actually led to believe, or we're learning now just how much control she has over the action that's going on in the sitcom. And then the show ends, not with a post-credit scene, but it ends once again with the audio of a voice coming in asking, who is doing this to you, Wanda? Which I think is going to be a significant question that hopefully the show starts to address as we get into later chapters. So episode 2 goes through the 1960s. We'll be getting into the 70s by the time we get into episode 3, I would assume. We have transitioned from black and white into color. That character who also seems really confused about where she was and saying things like, I don't feel like I belong here. I think all those things have double meaning, and the more that we figure out what the truth behind this reality of Wanda's creation is going to be, I think you'll go back and watch a couple of these things. Like there's a line in the first episode where Vision says to Wanda, like a plate comes flying and hits him in the head, and he goes,
my wife and the flying saucers.
And then by the end of that episode, you learn that someone from SWORD is watching Wanda and taking notes on what's going on. And SWORD, of course, is an interplanetary sort of protection unit that wards off extraterrestrial threats. Now, does that mean that the flying saucer line has more double meaning to it? I mean, I think that that's highly possible. So I'll be fascinated to find out where we go from here. Tell me what you guys think after the first 2 episodes of WandaVision. Head to the comments below and weigh in on your thoughts on the show. I think it's fantastic so far. It's a great return for these characters. I think we're going to see a much bigger thing at play here, which will feed into. Now, remember, we got to get around to the introduction of the multiverse in this show. The show is supposed to have a lot to do with the multiverse. I've been told there are going to be some surprising guest stars throughout it. I wonder if someone like Stephen Strange could show up and help connect with Wanda. Very much in the House of M comic book storyline, Strange is significant to finding Wanda, connecting with her on a different level, talking to her in the astral plane. And so since WandaVision is going to feed into the third Spider-Man by way of Doctor Strange into the multiverse of madness, I wouldn't be stunned to see Stephen Strange show up in this somehow to maybe be the person who pulls her back to reality a little bit. That would be a hell of a surprise. So let's see. We're going through this together. We're going to go through season 1 of WandaVision together. This was episode 2. I'll meet you back here for episode 3. To make sure you don't miss anything, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and we will continue to track WandaVision throughout the course of this exciting first season.